He fired me on a Friday. The cloud platform he hired to replace me went live the following Monday morning. By Wednesday afternoon, 700 tons of carbon steel had been delivered to a Westinghouse pressure vessel contract that required a 516 grade 70 plate. I was at home in the South Hills rebuilding my deck. The first time my phone went off that Wednesday was 3 in the afternoon. I was at the 84 Lumber on Washington Road in Bridgeville, buying joist hangers and a box of 3-inch deck screws. I let it go to voicemail. The second time was at 3:42 while I was loading the truck. The third was at 4:18 while I was driving home up Route 19. The fourth was at 5:06 when I was already in the driveway. I knew the number. I did not pick up. By 8 that evening I had eaten the leftover beef stew Marisol had not finished from Friday. The phone rang again. The number on the screen this time was different. The area code was 239, Naples, Florida. I picked up. "Frank, it's Sal. I'm calling because I need you, not because Antonio asked me to call." I held the phone for a second. "Sal, I'll come tomorrow morning. I want my attorney on the call. Have your attorney there too?" I hung up. I told Marisol. She set her coffee cup down on the counter and said one word. "Good." Then she went upstairs to call our son. I am 56 years old. I was born in Pittsburgh in 1969, in the Bloomfield neighborhood, in a row house on Liberty Avenue that my parents rented from a man named Falcone, who had grown up 2 doors down from my grandfather. My father, Vincent, was a steam fitter at Jones and Laughlin Steel until the strip mill on the south side shut down in '82. He spent the rest of his working life on the maintenance crew at a Catholic hospital in Lawrenceville. He died of a heart attack in 2005 at the age of 68. He had a Korean War-era veterans education benefit he had never used. The benefit transferred to me. I used it. I went to the community college in 1987. Associates in Information Systems, 2 years. I started at DeLuca Metals as a database administrator in 1999, age 29. By then I had finished my bachelor's at Carnegie Mellon University on the night school plan. 8 years to a 4-year degree, 1 course a semester for most of it. The man who hired me was Salvatore DeLuca himself, who in those days still walked the Southside warehouse every Tuesday morning and remembered the weight slip on every coil he passed. He shook my hand and said, "Frankie, you stay out of my warehouse, and I'll stay out of your computers." I have stayed at DeLuca Metals for 26 years. DeLuca is a regional steel service center. The business is what it sounds like. We buy mill-grade steel from US Steel, Nucor, Cleveland Cliffs, ArcelorMittal, and 7 other mills. We cut it, we treat it, we test it, and we deliver it to fabricators, automotive Tier 1 suppliers, power plant contractors, and bridge engineers across western Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, West Virginia, and northern Maryland. The yard is unglamorous. The trucks are unglamorous. The thing that has kept us in business since 1948 is none of those things. It is the system that links every coil and plate and bar that comes through our gate to a customer-acceptable material certificate. We call it the DeLuca Material Tracking System. Internally, we call it the system. I built most of it, to be precise. The system was started in 1995 by my predecessor, a man named Frank Bocchino, who everyone called Big Frank to avoid confusing him with me when I came on board 4 years later. Big Frank retired in 2003. From 2003 to 2010, I wrote the part of the system that maps mill certificate data, what each individual mill puts on the piece of paper they ship with the steel, into a single canonical record our customers' inspectors will accept without question. 12 mills. Each of them sends their data in a different format, with different conventions, different code numbers for the same grade, different tolerance bands, different units. The translation layer between those 12 mill formats and the 400 customer formats we ship to is approximately 41,000 lines of code spread across 184 mapping files. I have read every one of those files. The men who used to work for me have read maybe a dozen between them. There is a hard drive that has been in my desk since the day I started in 1999. Big Frank sat me down in my first week and said, "Always have a copy off the building, Frankie. The yard burns down once a generation. The yard has not burned down. The drive is a personal external drive, not a company asset. It contains every commit I have made to the system for 23 years, including the integration mappings and the deployment scripts that allow a complete restoration from scratch. I take it home over long weekends. I bring it back Monday. I bought a new one in 2012 when the old one started clicking. The current one is a Western Digital, encrypted 4 terabytes. I had a team, I should be honest about this, 5 people, all of whom could have run DeLuca's day-to-day operations technology in my absence for 6 months without anyone noticing. Manny Schaefer, 51, joined the team in 2008, owned customer spec workflow. Donna Ostrowski, 54, joined in 2010, owned the database itself. Dean Carter, 38, systems integration engineer, joined in 2018, had read about a dozen of the mapping files and was the only person besides me who knew where the boundaries of the integration layer were. Renee Bell, 33, business analyst, owned the customer-facing reporting layer. Alex Carmichael, 29, junior developer, 2 years into a 5-year learning curve. Smart kid, willing. What none of them owned, and what I had not yet handed off, was the integration layer itself. In November of 2024, Salvatore DeLuca's grandson Antonio came back from Wharton with a Bain & Company stamp on his resume and was named Chief Executive Officer of DeLuca Metals. Sal moved to chairman. Tony's father, Vincent, who had been president since 2005, moved to a quieter title and to his vineyard in Adams County. Tony was 31. He had spent the previous 18 months charming the bank in Squirrel Hill, charming our customers, and charming the senior team. I had no quarrel with the charming. I had no quarrel with Tony in those first months. Most days he stayed out of the warehouse, and I stayed out of his office. In April of last year, Tony went to a Wharton family business symposium at the Four Seasons in Philadelphia. He had a 90-minute breakfast with a senior customer success manager from a Chicago software vendor named 4Jobs Cloud. Her name was Madison Royer, and the deck she sent him afterward was 32 pages and used the word robust 22 times. 4Jobs Cloud had been founded in 2023. They had 32 employees and 16 customer references. The oldest of those references was a 4-warehouse service center in Indiana that had been live for 11 months and used about a fifth of the platform's functionality. None of the other 15 had a contract with a nuclear pressure vessel program. On Tuesday, August 12, 2025, Tony asked me into his office and introduced me to 4Jobs Cloud. I had been told by his assistant the meeting was about strategic technology direction. I sat down. I listened. When he finished, I said one sentence. Tony, before we go any further with 4Jobs, I need to walk you through what the system actually does, not the database, the integration layer. He nodded. Frank, you can do that. Put a deck together. 3 weeks. That is the day I started writing the risk assessment. I delivered it on Tuesday, September 2nd. 23 pages, 47 specific risks. Risks 1 through 4 were categorized catastrophic. Material certificate rejection within 30 days of cutover. Customer suspension. Contract loss. The senior team was in the room. Tony had his phone face up on the table. I gave him 15 minutes of structured prose. I watched him scroll through the executive summary on his phone screen for the entire 15 minutes, occasionally nodding at the wrong place. When I was done, he said, kindly enough, the sentence I had known he was going to say. Frank, the standard adapters are robust. Madison's team has it covered. Let's move forward. The senior team did not look at me. I did not look at the senior team. If you've ever watched a 32-year-old MBA dismiss 23 years of integration work in a single sentence, hit subscribe and stay with me. It gets better. Tony approved the migration on Tuesday, September 9th. Cutover scheduled for Monday, November 3rd. The 4Jobs Cloud implementation team, 3 young consultants out of Chicago, moved into our Aliquippa training room for 6 weeks of requirements gathering. They interviewed me twice. They interviewed Tony 6 times. They did not ask anyone on my team about the integration layer because nobody had told them there was one. On Monday, October 20th, Tony's calendar invite landed in my inbox for the next Monday at 11. Subject, one-on-one. The body of the invite said, Hi Frank, quick check-in. His assistant booked 30 minutes. It took 14. I sat across the desk from him at 11 that Monday, October 27th, 2025, and listened while he explained to me that DeLuca was undergoing an operations function realignment to support the platform model. My role was being eliminated. My team would be reassigned to platform integration support, effectively ticket queue work for 4Jobs Cloud's customer success operation. Severance was 12 weeks at base. The effective date of my termination was Friday, October 31st, the last day before cutover. He said the company appreciated everything I had built. He used the word legacy 3 times in 14 minutes. He asked me to ensure a smooth handoff. I waited until he was finished. I'll leave it cleaner than I found it. I stood. I walked out of his office. I went back to mine, and I started writing the handoff documentation for the parts of the system system the 4 jobs consultants had asked me about, which is not very many parts. That week, I demonstrated the system console for the consultants twice. Both times, they asked me about the user interface. Neither time did they ask me about the mappings. I answered no questions about the integration layer because no questions about the integration layer were asked. On the Wednesday, I deleted my Outlook archive locally. ET had requested it as part of the offboarding, but I had already mirrored it to the external drive in my desk over the long weekend in 2015. And again every Friday since. I did not mention this to IT. They did not ask. On Friday, October 31st, at 4:30 in the afternoon, I packed a banker's box. The box held a coffee mug Marisol's mother had given me in 1996, a desk frame with a 2009 photograph of my son Joey standing in the Norfolk Southern locomotive yard at Conway in his first conductor's vest, smiling. 3 back issues of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers journal that I had been meaning to read for about 4 years, and the personal external drive I had kept in the desk's bottom drawer since 1999. I walked out of the Southside facility at 4:42. The security guard's name was Walter. He had been there since 1993. He held the door open for me. He did not say anything. He did not have to. I drove home in the LaCrosse. The traffic on the Liberty Tunnel was light for a Friday evening. I made the drive in 28 minutes. I started a pot of beef stew on the stove because I had been thinking about beef stew since lunchtime. Marisol came in the back door at 6:02, smelling of the chemistry lab at Mercy Hospital downtown. Her shift at UPMC Mercy ends at 2:30 in the afternoon, and she usually runs errands on the way home. She looked at the box on the kitchen floor, and she looked at me at the stove. She set her purse on the counter. They finally did it. I nodded. She ate stew at the kitchen table with me. Joey called on the cordless from his rented house in Coraopolis at 7. He works the 3rd shift extra board for Norfolk Southern out of the Conway yard, and he had heard from his mother. I told him I was fine. I told him I was rebuilding the deck. He said, "Pop, you've been talking about that deck since I was in high school." I said, "Yeah, now I have time." He laughed and said he had to go on duty at 10 and would call me Sunday. I went to bed at 10:30. I slept fine. On Saturday morning, the 1st of November, I drove to the 84 Lumber on Washington Road and bought $860 worth of cedar planking, joist hangers, galvanized framing nails, and a quart of waterproofing stain in cordovan brown. I tore down the old deck Saturday afternoon. The wood was 24 years old, soft at the joists, warped at the planks, and I had been planning to replace it since 2022, when Marisol nearly put a heel through the 2nd step on her way out to the garden in May. I worked until dark. Marisol brought me a Yuengling. I drank it on the back stoop, looking at the pile of cedar-stained 2x4s in the driveway. On Sunday afternoon, I watched the Pittsburgh Pirates lose to the St. Louis Cardinals on television in the kitchen, with the volume low and the back door open while I was sketching the new deck framing on a piece of yellow legal paper. The Pirates lost 5-2. Joey called at 7 from Coraopolis. He asked if I wanted help on Saturday next. I said yes. On Monday, November 3rd, at 6 o'clock in the morning, 4jobs Cloud went live. The first cutover order through 4jobs Cloud at 6:04 that Monday morning was for 2 10-foot lengths of half-inch carbon steel round bar, going to a machine shop in Beaver County that uses the bar to cut shaft blanks for a transmission rebuild operation. It was a low-pressure, low-margin, no customer inspector kind of order. The platform handled it cleanly. Tony's senior team got an automated confirmation email at 6:12. By 11 that morning, 312 orders had processed. The orders that had moved through the platform between 6 and 11 were straightforward. Bar stock, sheet, simple shapes, low-margin commodity work, customers without third-party inspection requirements. 4jobs Cloud standard adapters were robust enough for these. The standard adapters had been built by 4jobs Cloud's engineers in Chicago against the kinds of mill-cert formats described in the textbooks, the kind that exist in the textbooks, not the kind the actual mills had been producing for 50 years. By 4 in the afternoon, 814 had processed. The shift change happened at 3:30 the way it always happens. The night dispatcher came on at 11 the way she always does. Tony emailed the senior team a single line at 4:18. "Great work, team." Madison Royer's customer success team in Chicago sent flowers to the Aliquippa training room. Renee Bell, who had been moved off her business analyst role into a platform integration support assignment 2 weeks earlier, signed for the flowers because she happened to be standing in the lobby when they arrived. She put them on the kitchenette table. She did not text anyone about it. I was at home that Monday. I had spent the morning ripping the old footings out of the backyard with a sledgehammer and a digging bar. The footings were 4-inch concrete piers from 1998, set 2 feet down by a contractor named Rusty, who used to drink at the same bar in Mount Lebanon as my brother-in-law. They came up dirty. By 2 in the afternoon, I had dug 6 new sonotube holes. Marisol came home from the chemistry lab at 3. She made grilled cheese. I drank a Yuengling on the back stoop. I did not turn my phone on. At 6:04 on Tuesday morning, November 4th, 2025, a Lloyd's Register authorized inspector named Eugene Babbitt walked into the receiving bay at Westinghouse Electric's Cranberry Township pressure vessel components plant and flipped on the bay overhead lights. Eugene is 62. He has worked the Lloyd's Register Cranberry contract since 2007. He has known me professionally since the same year. He scans every cert that comes through that bay. 28 tons of coil had come in overnight from our Southside facility. 3 Westinghouse forklift drivers had it staged by grade. Eugene pulled out his scanner and pointed it at the cert barcode on the first coil. The cert opened. The grade field read a 516 grade 70. Eugene scrolled down. The lower portion of the cert is the alloy verification signature, the chemical fingerprint produced by a handheld analyzer at our test bench, taken from the coil itself before it ships. The signature is a fingerprint of what the steel actually is, not what the paperwork says it is. The two are supposed to match. They had matched on every cert Eugene had scanned from us since 2007. The signature on the screen read, a 537 Class 1. Eugene took the scanner off his belt clip and put it back on, slowly, the way a man does when he wants to see whether his hands are working the same as they were a minute earlier. He looked at the cert again. He looked at the heat number stamp on the coil itself, hand-stamped at the Southside facility on the lead edge of the strip the way our floor team has stamped coils since 1978. The stamp read 516. The cert read 516. The alloy fingerprint signature on the cert said something else. That contradiction is meaningful. Carbon manganese silicon plate is not the same thing as quenched and tempered low alloy plate. They have different chemistries. They cannot be substituted in any pressure vessel application. The kind of vessel Westinghouse builds out of A516 is the kind of vessel that holds primary coolant at high temperature in a nuclear island. The kind of vessel they build out of A537 is the kind of vessel they do not build at all in that bay. The two grades are not interchangeable. They are not even adjacent. Eugene flagged the coil. He pulled the next 4 off the staging line. He scanned every cert. All 4 showed the same pattern. The cert grade said one thing, the alloy fingerprint said another. The fingerprints were correct. The grade fields were not. Somewhere between the test bench and the certificate, a translation had failed. Eugene knew by the second cert that this was not a one-coil error. He had been watching cert layouts for 30 years. He took his hard hat off and set it on the workbench. He called his counterpart at our Southside dispatch. The man who used to hold the Southside dispatch position was Manny Schaefer. Manny had taken a job at U.S. Steel Tubular 4 weeks earlier, when his role was officially reassigned to platform integration support. The position had been backfilled by a 26-year-old kid named Skyler, who had been at DeLuca Metals for 3 weeks. He answered Eugene's call. He did not understand what Eugene was telling him. He told Eugene he would escalate. By 11:30, Skyler had 4Jobs Cloud customer success on the line. Madison Royer scheduled a deep dive call for the following afternoon. By 2:14, Westinghouse had formally rejected the 7-coil delivery from the night before. The Lloyd's Register inspector, a Cranberry Township staffer named Eugene Babbitt, who had been doing the same job for 30 years, declined to sign certification on any of the 7 and pulled the 4 after them and told Westinghouse procurement to put the next scheduled delivery on hold pending root cause from DeLuca. Westinghouse procurement is a man named Charles Whitfield. He has held the senior buyer role on the AP1000 pressure vessel program for 14 years. The contract DeLuca holds with Westinghouse, $24 million a year, plus the program life option through 2034, is a contract Charles personally signed in 2015 and re-signed in 2020 after I walked him through the cert traceability layer in our Southside conference room over a Tuesday afternoon and a pot of coffee. He did not call 4Jobs customer success. He called Tony's office at 3:08. Tony was in a meeting. He did not pick up. Charles called Sal in Naples next. Sal was on his fishing boat off Marco Island. Sal does not always answer his phone on the boat. He did not that afternoon. At 5:42 on Tuesday afternoon, Tony emailed me from his phone in his office. The email had no subject line. The body was 11 words. Frank, would you mind giving me 10 minutes? Today, ideally. I did not see the email until Wednesday morning. The phone had been in the kitchen drawer since Marisol asked me at dinner Monday whether I was going to look at it, and I said no. I was eating leftovers and thinking about whether the cordovan stain or a darker walnut would weather better against the limestone retaining wall. By Wednesday at 8:30 in the morning, an incoming quality manager named Amy Roberts at Toyota Iron Works of America in Princeton, Indiana, Tier 1 supplier to Toyota Manufacturing Indiana, rejected an inbound shipment of high-strength, low-alloy structural coils we had delivered Monday afternoon. Same problem. The cert paperwork did not match the alloy fingerprint signature. Amy placed DeLuca on hold pending corrective action plan. At 10:14, Charles Whitfield issued a written notice on Westinghouse letterhead, subject line, suspension of qualified supplier status, DeLuca Metals, pressure vessel plate, effective immediately, pending root cause investigation. The next planned shipment, Friday, was held. Charles emailed the notice to Tony's office. He copied Sal. He copied his own director. He did not copy me. Sal opened it in Naples at 11:30 Eastern. He had docked at his condo's marina 40 minutes earlier. He read the suspension letter twice. He read it slowly the second time, the way Sal reads anything that comes from a customer he has known for 40 years. He picked up his cell phone. He called Tony. Antonio, I just got a call from Charlie Whitfield. What did you do? Tony tried to walk Sal through the migration. He used the words platform and modernization and robust, the last one twice in one sentence. He told Sal that 4Jobs Cloud customer success was on it. He told Sal that Madison Royer was coordinating with our team on a deep dive call that afternoon. Sal listened for 45 seconds. Antonio, stop, call Frank. Sal hung up. He did not call back. Tony called my cell at 3. I did not answer. I was at the 84 Lumber on Washington Road buying joist hangers and a box of 3-inch deck screws. The kid at the contractor desk recognized me from Saturday and asked if I was building a porch or a deck. I said deck. He said his dad had built one off the back of his folks' place in Castle Shannon last summer, and it had been a bigger job than he thought it would be. I said most of them are. He gave me a contractor discount. The total was $41 and change. Tony called again at 3:42, 4:18, and 5:06. By the fourth call, I was already in the driveway at home, and I knew exactly who was calling and why. I did not pick up. I went inside, washed up at the kitchen sink, took the lumber receipt off the dashboard for tax purposes. Marisol still files my returns, and she likes the originals, and started a pot of beef stew. I ate the leftover beef stew Marisol had not finished from Friday. I read the cert binder I had carried home in my banker's box, just out of habit. The phone buzzed in the drawer. I left it. At 8 that evening, the phone rang again. The number was different. The area code was 239, Naples, Florida. I picked up. Frank, it's Sal. I'm calling because I need you. Not because Antonio asked me to call. Sal had a generator on in the background, the satellite phone hum in his voice the way it gets when he is on the boat after dark. I held the phone for a second. I thought about Sal, 26 years ago, on a Tuesday morning in 1999, walking me into the warehouse on the south side and pointing at a coil rack 2 stories up and saying, Frankie, you put a number on every one of those that nobody can argue with, and we'll be in business another 50 years. I thought about Big Frank Bocchino sitting next to me on my second day saying, always have a copy off the building. I thought about the external drive in my desk drawer at home, behind the box of Joey's old high school report cards. Sal, I'll come tomorrow morning. I want my attorney on the call. Have your attorney there too. He was quiet. I could hear the boat moving against its lines. He said finally, Frank, whatever it costs, you tell me what it costs. I said, tomorrow morning, 9. My attorney will call yours. Her name is Dolores Hopkins. She is is on Smithfield Street. Devin Walsh at Balin McCormick will know how to find her. Sal said, Devin's on the call. He said, Frank, Antonio doesn't know I'm calling. I said, I figured. He said, he will tomorrow. I said, Sal, one more thing. He waited. I'm bringing the drive. He was quiet for a beat. He said, Frankie, I assumed you would. He hung up first. The line went silent the way satellite phone lines go silent. Not a click, just an absence. I told Marisol. She set her coffee cup down on the counter and said one word. Good. Then she went upstairs to call our son. Joey was on the third shift extra board out of the Conway yard. He had a 45-minute window before his next shift. He listened to his mother for 30 seconds and asked to talk to me. I picked up the cordless. Pop, are you going back? I said, I'm going to a meeting. We'll see. He said, you're going back. I said, we'll see. He laughed. He said, Pop, I love you. Don't take less than you should. He had to go. He hung up. I called Dolores Hopkins at home at 8:40. Dolores has been my attorney since 2011, when she handled a non-compete dispute for me with a software vendor that wanted to claim a piece of integration work I had done on a side contract during a vacation week. Dolores won that one in 18 days and never billed me for the second week. She picked up on the third ring. I told her what was happening. She listened. She said, Frank, I have a notepad. Tell me your terms. I had been thinking about the terms since the Monday Tony's invite landed in my inbox, October 20th, but I had not written them down. I told her now. She wrote 6 items. We were done in about 20 minutes. She said, tomorrow at 9, I will be at your house at 8:30 with the framework agreement printed. Bring 2 pens. I said, I will. She said, Frank, you sleep. I slept fine. Marisol was already asleep when I came up. I read the new Pirates roster for next year for about 10 minutes on the nightstand under the lamp, and I went out. Dolores Hopkins arrived at my house at 8:20 Thursday morning, November 6, 2025. She had a leather portfolio under one arm and a cup of black coffee from the place on West Liberty Avenue she likes. She set the coffee on the kitchen table and the portfolio next to it. Marisol had already gone into the lab. Joey had texted at 6 telling me to call him after. Dolores had drafted 6 terms overnight against the framework I had given her on the phone. She read them to me at the kitchen table. We made 2 changes. We were ready by 8:50. The video call started at 9 sharp. Sal was on his boat off Marco Island. Devin Walsh was in his office on Grant Street. Tony was in the corner office at the Southside facility, alone, with the door closed. Dolores had me on a tripod laptop in the living room. She read the terms. 8 minutes. 1. Antonio DeLuca to be reassigned to a non-operational role of Sal's choosing. Not chief executive officer, not president, not on the operations side of the business in any capacity for the duration of my contract. 2. My title to be Chief Operations Architect, reporting directly to Sal until a new Chief Executive Officer with demonstrated heavy industry operational experience could be recruited externally. My role and authority to be unchanged thereafter. 3. My previous team, Manny Schaefer, Donna Ostrowski, Dean Carter, Renee Bell, Alex Carmichael, to be offered their original roles back at original or higher pay, with no loss of tenure, including Manny if he chose to come back from US Steel Tubular. Donna to be offered the same return. If she chose retirement, that was her choice, and DeLuca would honor the early retirement package she was already negotiating. 4. Compensation. Base from $185,000 to $295,000. 4-year contract guarantee. $40,000 retention bonus paid on signing. 5. The 4-jobs cloud cutover to be rolled back to the DeLuca material tracking system within 72 hours. I would oversee the rollback. 4-jobs cloud's contract to be terminated for cause. Recovery handled separately by Devin's office. 6. Tony to send a written apology to the senior team via internal email by close of business Friday, citing specifically that the migration had been approved against documented operational risk advice. Dolores had pre-drafted the language. Dolores stopped reading. The room was quiet for about 5 seconds. Sal said, Devin, we accept all of it. Frank, when can you start? I said, 3 this afternoon. If Devin can have the contract draft ready, I'm bringing the drive. Devin Walsh said, I will have it ready at 1. Tony didn't say anything on the call. I was at the Southside facility at 3:06. The badge reader at the south entrance recognized my old credentials. Information technology had not yet purged them, which was a small mercy. Walter was on the desk. He nodded once. He did not stand. He did not need to. I walked to the data center. Dean Carter was waiting for me there. there. Renee had called him at 11 that morning. He had 2 laptops open, the rack lights blinking the way they always blink, the sound of the server room fans the way it has been for 26 years. Dean had been in the building 4 hours already. He had pulled the pre-migration backup tape from the safe in the server room corner, second shelf, behind the box of old company tax records, and verified the tape's integrity against a checksum I had emailed him from my home machine at 11:45. Frank, Dean, I set the external drive on the rack workbench. I plugged it into the staging server. I opened the source control mirror. We started. The rollback took 78 working hours over 4.5 days. Real systems are not 18 hours. Anyone who tells you a real on-premises system can be brought back from a vendor cutover in 18 hours has either never done it or is lying about how it went the last time. We worked in shifts. Renee was there the whole time. Alex Carmichael came back from a fly fishing trip in West Virginia on Thursday evening with 3 days beard and a dirty pair of boots and worked through Friday morning. Manny Schaefer's boss at US Steel Tubular, a man Manny worked under who had bought from DeLuca for 14 years and recognized a serious situation when his senior application engineer told him about one. Let Manny call in for 45 minutes during each lunch break to walk us through the customer spec workflow he had been the owner of since 2008. He used his cell phone. He stood in the parking lot. He came back to DeLuca officially the following Monday, at original pay plus a small adjustment, no loss of tenure. Donna Ostrowski took the early retirement package and sent Sal a card. Dean Carter signed a new agreement Saturday morning at my kitchen table over a pot of coffee and Marisol's lemon bars. Renee Bell got her old roll back without asking. Alex got a raise. Sometime around 2 in the morning Sunday, between the customer spec mapping pass and the alloy fingerprint reconciliation, Renee brought a box of donuts in from the all-night place on East Carson Street. Dean had taken his shoes off. Alex was asleep on a folding chair in the conference room next to the data center. I drank black coffee out of a mug somebody on the cleaning crew had left on a desk in 2017, with a logo for a company called Allegheny Bearings that hasn't existed since 2019. I thought about Big Frank Bocchino on the day he walked me through my first cert in 1999. He was 63. He had hands like a stonemason. He sat me down at the desk that became my desk, and he said, "Frankie, the yard makes the steel. The trucks move the steel. The people in this office are the only people who can prove what the steel is. You forget that. You should go work somewhere else." He retired in 2003. He died in 2015 of an aneurysm in his sleep on a Tuesday morning in his daughter's house in Greensburg. I had thought about him every Tuesday morning since. I thought about him a lot more that weekend. The system came back up at 4 o'clock Monday morning, November 10th, the Tuesday morning Westinghouse delivery. The 7 coils that had been on hold since the rejection moved out of the south side yard at 9 sharp on the truck driver's logbook. The cert paperwork on each coil matched the alloy fingerprint signature on each coil. Eugene Babbitt scanned the first cert at 11:42 in the Cranberry Township receiving bay. He read it. He scrolled. He read it again. He signed it. He signed the next 6. Charles Whitfield called Sal in Naples at noon. Sal was back on his boat. He took the call from the cockpit. "Charlie." "Sal, are we good?" Sal said. "Charlie, Frank's back. Antonio's not." 10 seconds of nothing on the line. Then Charles said, "All right, reinstating the qualified supplier status. I'll have the paper today." Sal said, "Thank you, Charlie." He hung up. He sat on the cockpit bench for about a minute. Then he called me. He said, "Frankie, the yard didn't burn down." I said, "Sal, it came close." He laughed. He said, "Yeah, it came close." The Toyota root cause investigation took 6 weeks. Amy Roberts and her team in Princeton, Indiana, asked for documentation of the migration failure, the rollback, the system of record handoff, and the alloy fingerprint signature reconciliation procedure. I prepared all of it personally. I drove out to Princeton on a Friday in the second week of December and walked Amy through the documents at her conference table. We went over the corrective action plan line by line. She accepted the plan on Wednesday, December 17th. She placed DeLuca on an 18-month requalification observation period, standard for a Tier 1 incident. We did not lose the business. We did not lose any business at all. In December, Sal kicked off the external chief executive officer search through a firm called Russell Reynolds. He told me about it from his condo on a Saturday morning. He told me he had given Tony 3 options for reassignment. Tony chose the one in Naples, director of family office investments at the Family Trust Office 2 miles from Sal's condo. Tony moved to Florida in early January. He did not call me before he left. I did not expect him to. 4Jobs Cloud Incorporated filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy on Tuesday, January 15, 2026. 3 of their other 16 customer references were also in remediation, 2 of them more serious than ours. Madison Royer was laid off in the bankruptcy and resurfaced 6 weeks later as an independent consultant in Chicago, telling people on professional networking sites that she had led platform implementations across the steel and metals vertical. She did not name DeLuca. In February, Sal announced the new chief executive officer. His name is Glenn Tarasov. He is 58. He spent 14 years as chief operating officer of a Cleveland-based steel processing company called Republic Steel Industries. No relation to the historical Republic Steel that closed in the 80s. Glenn started at DeLuca on Monday, March 2nd. He came down to my office on his second day, sat across from me and said, "Frank, I want to understand the integration layer. Walk me through it." He had a notebook. We spent 4 hours that day. We have spent another 5 hours together since. He listens. On Sunday, April 19th, 2026, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, my son and I drove to PNC Park to watch the Pittsburgh Pirates play the Chicago Cubs. Joey had taken the day off the Norfolk Southern extra board. I had a black and gold knit cap on my head that Marisol had bought me at the team shop in 2018. Marisol was at home watching the game on the television with our neighbor Pat from across the street. The Pirates were playing the 4 o'clock Eastern game on a Sunday before a long road trip to the West Coast. The weather was 58 and partly cloudy with a light wind off the Allegheny. We had seats in section 133, 8 rows up the third base side. The view across the field is one of the best views in baseball, even when the team is losing. The Roberto Clemente Bridge gold against the Allegheny gray, and the downtown buildings sitting square on the river behind right field. Joey bought us hot dogs from the stand by the gate. He paid. He has been paying when we go to ball games together since he was 23. The hot dog had brown mustard and sauerkraut on it. I had a cup of coffee. He had a Yuengling. The Pirates were down 2-0 in the third when we sat down. The bullpen looked tired and it was still early. In the bottom of the 5th inning, the Pirates' first baseman bobbled a routine throw to second on what should have been a clean 6-4-3 double play, and the Cubs scored 2 runs on the error. I put my hands on the back of the seat in front of me, and I said, loud enough for the men in the row to hear me, "Are you kidding me with that?" Joey laughed. The man in the seat behind us, a stranger in his 30s, wearing a black and gold sweatshirt and a beat-up Steelers cap, leaned forward. "Bad week." I looked at him. I said, "Bad month." Joey looked over at me. He said, "Dad, it's been a good month." I looked at my son. He has my chin. He has Marisol's eyes. He stood next to me on the deck in the backyard the Saturday before that, helping me set joist hangers. And we did not talk about Westinghouse or Naples or 4Jobs Cloud once in 5 hours. I said, "All right, good month." He took a drink of his Yuengling and looked back at the field. He did not push it. He has not pushed at me since he was about 15, when he figured out, without anyone telling him, that I was the kind of father who needed to be left alone for about a day before the answer came out, and that the answer would come out without his help. The Pirates got the next batter to ground into a double play 3 pitches later. The crowd in section 133 stood up and yelled. I did not check my phone. I did not think about the 78-hour rollback, or the alloy fingerprint signatures, or whether Madison Royer had found a new vertical to consult in. I thought about the Cubs' bullpen, and whether the cold front coming in tonight was going to mess with the deck stain I had put down the day before. Tony had taken Madison Royer's word that 4Jobs Cloud standard adapters were robust. I had built the actual translation layer between 12 mills and 400 customers over 23 years. The standard adapters were robust enough for a 4-warehouse service center in Indiana with no nuclear customers. They were not robust enough for the AP 1000 program. By Wednesday, that was Westinghouse's letter to Sal. By Thursday, it was Sal's letter to Tony. By the following Monday, it was my deck. Sometimes the most expensive thing in a steel building isn't the steel, it's the source code on a backup drive in a banker's box. If you got something out of this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what part stayed with you. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe and ring the notification bell so the next one shows up. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.